Welcome to Exhibition. And hello, Minwoo Bang.
Hello, Richard. Thank you for having me.
I'm delighted. Great to see you there in your studio, by the look of it. And your exhibition is recent paintings at Wagner Contemporary in Sydney. And so much of the focus, as we will see in this exhibition, is looking upwards towards the sky, looking upwards towards the clouds above the landscape. How did you come to be so fascinated by clouds and the sky above the landscape?
I personally like the cloud because it has that very much like a sculptural element of it. And you know, when I'm painting something, I like to have the drama and the strong aspect of the sculptural form. So I think that's the way that when I'm looking for the cloud, I look for the sculptural element, which gives a lot of drama. I was looking into the notion of impermanence and something untouchable, and that's the way I got into looking into the sky and the cloud.
How do you find the clouds that you're looking for? How do you literally seek them out?
Yeah, you just have to go out there and then look for it. You have to chase them. So, some days you might fail to see any clouds, just the blue sky. But sometimes, it's out of blue. Just, the stormy clouds just comes into, the capture. So. So it is really interesting, process.
In some of these paintings, you don't indicate the place where you found these clouds, but in a couple of them, you have actually indicated where it is that you found those clouds. And there's one where we see the sky above Jindabyne, and there's one where we see the sky above Kosciuszko. Is there a particular reason that you specified those locations?
Yes, even if mainly focusing on the cloud itself, but still, the place where I've been to is really important aspect of it. So usually I used to go a lot of Blue Mountain areas in an early time, and then gradually, I was looking into different places like a hill end I've been to last, couple of years ago. And then recently I've been to, Kosciuszko. This is my second time trip there. And I found it really interesting because you reach, top of mountain, which is the highest, in Australia. So there's a lot of, energy in the sky. So you found it really interesting, and very sublime as well.
Two of the works seem to be linked specifically to history. They're called Wind of History 1 and Wind of History 2. And they struck me because we do see a little bit of a very eroded landscape at the bottom of each of these works. It seemed almost as though the history was literally on a geological scale.
Yes, that's right. Those two particular paintings I got a lot of inspiration from the Kosciuszko, where there's a lot of ancient rocks everywhere, pretty flat though. But as you're walking into the area, you can feel the sense of history, really long history. So I found that really interesting to capture that moment. And at the same time, that looking at the cloud, it almost like becoming sometimes very strong. Sometimes, there's not many clouds, depending on the time where you are. That gives me the sense of place, also the sense of history. That's what I'm trying to paint.
Is there a sense with those and some of the other works that history is actually being created by the clouds and by the rain and by the weather forces that they represent, that this landscape is being eroded over millions of years by endless storms and wind and rain. Is that part of what you're connecting to?
Yeah, I think you got the really major point from because you know all the land, the rock or trees, whatever we've got here, is because of it influenced by the air and the wind and the time. You know, those that actually interconnected together. So it is really important. I'm trying to paint the land and sky.
There is a work which doesn't have any of the land in it, but seems to contain that very active energy of the cloud and the weather and the movement in the work called The Shape of Cloud. Do you feel sometimes that you are trying to capture movement as much as you're trying to capture the shape of the clouds?
Yes, it is true that you know, the movement, it is really important because the nature creates the visual phenomena. So I have to capture that, which is very important. Whatever the nature creates the shape of the cloud, that gives me very artistically very inspiring, because it can be very abstracted feeling. Also, I can sometimes something I can relate to my life or as an artist. There's some kind of meaning to it.
When you mention meaning, there's also a long cultural association between, you know, majestic clouds and divinity in some way, some sort of religious association. Is there for you any sense of the divine or the ineffable in the way in which you're offering these clouds to us?
Yes, I am actually, I don't have a religion, but personally, but when I recall my childhood, like from maybe elementary school time, that's where I got a gift from my mom, or the collection of the classical painting collection. It's got all those from Da Vinci to Caravaggio, all those, the old masters. So even though I was very little, I would just keep looking at the book, and somehow those images are really into my head all the time. So that really helps me to, continue studying art. And as you can see, my paintings are quite classical. I think probably because of that my early childhood experience with art.
I understand that you are and have been very enthusiastic about 16th and 17th century landscape painters in particular. Do you see yourself still as perhaps part of that tradition that also then goes on to include, the great, well, the recognized sky and cloud painters like Constable and Turner and so on?
Yes, it has a very strong connection with the old masters painting in relation to the oil painting techniques and other type of the atmospheres and feelings with the paint. So but not only that, because I had to actually create my own style, based on that my learning process with old masters. So still I have to study and try to find my style.
You mentioned study and finding and establishing that style of your own. Tell us a little about your process of learning. I know you went to the National Art School, but when you came from South Korea, was it clear to you that was the direction that you would head in?
I guess it was really fortunate to, enter National Art School, and then after I studied at SCA, because I finished the special art high school in Korea, and I just finished the high school year 12, and then I came to Australia. So that's all I know. I know I love doing art. So might as well, continue studying, more, in Australia. So, but never thought about, being an artist or something like that. You just good at something, but you just keep going, and then, just naturally just came about, I think.
Going back to the depiction of the clouds and the materials that you use, the painting approach to create these extraordinarily three-dimensional shapes. Can you tell us something about your step-by-step approach to painting clouds?
Oh, yes. So, as an artist, you have to go to field trip to get a reference. Like I'll usually go to, let's say Blue Mountain. I go there and take a lot of photographs and walk around and try to find what inspiration I can get. And, you end up, many, few hundreds of photographs of the cloud or sky or trees, whatever you got it from there. And then you back to studio and then try to, look at all the photographs I took, and then you start selecting, what is going to be for my next body of work.
When you've been on a field trip like that and collected lots of photographic reference material, how much then is what you decide to paint an accurate reflection of the photographic reference material, and how much of it is your imagination responding to that material?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, but I think it's really depending on the individual work. Like some pieces, probably I put my thought or feeling more than actual photographs. So it really depending on my mood at the time. So because I like to be a bit more flexible about how I do painting. So I'm not really 100% relying on to the photograph. So it depends.
Some of the works occasionally seem almost to be like portraits of a cloud or a particular group of clouds. One called Flow of Nature, and the other simply called Untitled. And both of them seem as though they perhaps were clouds that you created or in some way created a portrait of.
Yes, that was actually it's quite close to the actual photograph.
Right.
Because I found that very interesting, because especially the flow of nature is that it actually is, clouds are really going around each other. They almost look like snakes or some kind of dragon. They're coming into, they're overlapping each other. So I found that really interesting, because I believe that there's the circle of life that is quite important. So everything going around, when things die and another new thing's born again, that's that is all about the world anyway. So when we die, you don't know what's going to happen after that, and everything will disappear. That's why I'm really into the notion of impermanence. So that's my major interest about my work.
Turning to the work which is Untitled, that seems to have almost an inner light. We presume it's the sun behind the cloud, kind of shining through and lighting up the edges of the cloud and the back of it. But what's your relationship as an artist and as a painter? What do you feel your relationship to light is? How do you observe it? How do you create light?
Yes, light, I guess, is one of the most important thing as an artist. Because even when I was young, I was looking into there are people, painters like Rembrandt, Caravaggio, all those the beauty of the light is there. So whenever I paint something, I'm always conscious about that, the lighting. So because without the light, there's no dark as well. So I think it's a really important part of my work. Also, that creates the, it boosts more feeling, whatever you paint.
And finally, there's a work simply called Big Storm, a very powerful work where we can see that, energy interaction between the sky and the clouds and the landscape below. Can you tell us how that work came about?
Yes, that particular, the large painting that I did was based on the trip that I made to Kosciuszko. And before going to the Kosciuszko, there's long drive, and then I found that there's a beautiful, almost look like a human body, hills like that, and dead trees and interesting trees, and at the same time there's a huge majestic, the cloud was following me. Almost, I felt like they're following me as well. So I had to stop the car and get out, and then I took the photo. So I captured that really interesting, and how can I say, it's really sublime. I got the feeling of the sublime. So, I took a lot of photographs of that, and then I came back to studio, I painted, was really happy about the result. And I feel that, as an artist, try to capture that, beauty. It doesn't matter what it is, but your personal beauty, you have to find it and then execute it.
Well, you mentioned the word sublime, and the sublime comes through in so many of the works in this exhibition. So Min Woo Bang, thank you very much for sharing your exhibition with us.
Thank you, Richard.